Ishmael Chapter 5, sections 5, 6, and 7. We now know two highly important things about people, Ishmael said, at least according to Taker mythology. One, there's something fundamentally wrong with them, and two, they have no certain knowledge about how they ought to live, and never will have any. It seems as though there should be a connection between these two things. Yes, if people knew how to live, then they'd be able to handle what was wrong with human nature. I mean, knowing how to live would have to include knowing how to live as flawed beings. If it didn't, then it wouldn't be the real McCoy. Do you see what I mean? I think so. In effect, you're saying that if you knew how you ought to live, then the flaw in man could be controlled. If you knew how you ought to live, you wouldn't be forever screwing up the world. Perhaps, in fact, these two things are actually one thing. Perhaps the flaw in man is exactly this, that he doesn't know how he ought to live. Yes, there's something to that. We now have all the major. We now have in place all the major elements of your culture's explanation of how things came to be this way. The world was given to man to turn it into a paradise, but he's always screwed it up because he's fundamentally flawed. He might be able to do something about this if he knew how he ought to live, but he doesn't, and he never will because no knowledge about that is obtainable. So, however hard man might labor to turn the world into a paradise, he's probably just going to go on screwing it up. Yes, that's the way it seems. It's a sorry story you have there, a story of hopelessness and futility, a story in which there is literally nothing to be done. Man is flawed, so he keeps on screwing up what should be paradise, and there's nothing you can do about it. You don't know how to live so as to stop screwing up paradise, and there's nothing you can do about that. So there you are, rushing headlong toward catastrophe, and all you can do is watch it come. Yes, that's the way it seems. With nothing but the wretched story to enact, it's no wonder that so many of you spend your lives stoned on drugs or booze or television. It's no wonder so many of you go mad or become suicidal. True, but is there another one? Another what? Another story to be in. Yes, there is another story to be in, but the takers are doing their level best to destroy that along with everything else. Have you done much sightseeing in your travels? I blinked at him stupidly. Sightseeing? Have you gone out of your way to have a look at the local sites? I guess so, sometimes. I'm sure you've noticed that only tourists really look at local landmarks. For all practical purposes, these landmarks are invisible to the natives, simply because they're always there in plain sight. Yes, that's so. This is what we've been doing in our journey so far. We've been wandering around your cultural homeland, looking at the landmarks the natives never see. A visitor from another planet would find them remarkable, even extraordinary, but the natives of your culture take them for granted and don't even notice them. That's right. You've had to clamp my head between your hands and point in one direction and say, "Don't you see that?" And I'd say, "See what? There's nothing there to see." We've spent a lot of today looking at one of your most impressive monuments, an axiom stating that there is no way to obtain any certain knowledge about how people ought to live. Mother Culture offers this for acceptance on its own merits without proof, since it is inherently unprovable. True. And the conclusion you draw from this axiom is, therefore there's no point in looking for such knowledge. That's right. According to your maps, the world of thought is coterminous with your culture. It ends at the border of your culture, and if you venture beyond that border, you simply fall off the edge of the world. Do you see what I mean? I think so. Tomorrow we'll screw up your courage and cross that border. And as you'll see, we will not fall off the edge of the world. We'll just find ourselves in new territory, in territory never explored by anyone in your culture, because your maps say it isn't there, and indeed can't be there.